Hey, Dooberteers, welcome back to the program. I'm really excited to have my good friend Stacy LeBaron on today. Stacy and I go back a number of years. She's the owner and the lead podcast person behind the Community Cat Central. And I didn't realize that Stacy actually has a background in urban planning and architecture. So I'm really interested to learn how that supports her in her quest for helping out feral cats. So Stacy, welcome to the show.
No, Chris, thank you so much for having me. And it's always a pleasure to chat with you today.
I know you and I just have such great conversations. So for our viewers or listeners, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. So I'm Stacy LeBaron. I am the head cat at Community Cat Central. And really, if you have to remember one thing about me, I am all about how to turn your passion for cats into action. That is what I am about. It's not about me, it's about you. And if you are passionate about cats, I'm going to help you change the world for cats in your community, elevate their status, create a more humane community for cats. And we do that through Community Cat Central, which is a newly launched e-learning platform. In addition to the Community Cats podcast, as Chris knows, I've done a lot of podcasting. We started in 2016 with the Community Cats podcast, and we have over 660 episodes of the show. So I dare you all to binge watch. I would give you a huge bonus if you could come back to me and you could say, Stacy, I have listened to every one of your episodes. That would be just incredibly exciting and huge. And my dream is to basically have a world where cats have the services and the needs that addressed that their guardians have for them, and just not be like, oh, there are all these cats out here, we can't do anything, woe is me. Let's make sure that there's a toolkit out there, Community Cat Toolkit, and we do that. And you've helped us at Doobert with our Community Cat Calculator, which helps folks think really strategically about how they're addressing cat overpopulation in their community.
Yeah. Yeah. You've done so much. And to me, it's like, I wonder, is Stacy going to burn out? And every time I think that, it's like, you find another gear, right? Like you said, you're over 600 episodes. I mean, you were doing those in the beginning, like 5 days a week, weren't you?
Yeah, we started out at 5 days a week. There's another podcast by John Lee Dumas for entrepreneurs, and he was doing it 5 days a week. And he's like, I'm the only one out there doing a daily show. And I was like, I could do that too, sure. And then we started out at 5, and then we trimmed down to 3, and then now we're down to a weekly show. And the reason that happened was because we started doing TNR certification workshops, so Trap-Neuter-Return certification workshops. We really want to professionalize the field of community cat program management, are, elevating the skills of the folks that are out there in the community. So if I have 4 cats in my backyard, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I know I want to help those cats, and I don't want kittens under my porch and all that kind of stuff. So how do I do that? Right? As an individual, how do I address that issue? Do I go out there with a carrier and just go, here, kitty, 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 come into my carrier? I mean, that would be my approach if I knew nothing, right? I mean, a cat has to have a carrier. Maybe I have a cat in the house. Okay. But these cats outside, they need to be in humane traps. They need to have an appointment scheduled within a couple of days, or at least a day or so that they're not living in those traps for a while. And we're teaching individuals those skills to be able to problem solve without having to necessarily go straight to the shelter and potentially overburden the shelter with questions that they might not be able to support at that particular time. So lots of empowerment in our house. We want to empower people to be able to make a change in the lives of cats in their community.
I think it's awesome. So Stacy, take us back in time, right? There was a time, there must have been a particular cat situation, an animal, something that flipped that switch in you. They started you down this journey.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to say that I started in 1994. So that's been a minute, over, 32 years. And so there's a lot of aha moments in this journey that I've had in the cat welfare space. So I started with a very small organization in Newburyport, Massachusetts back in 1994. They'd started in 1992 with 300 cats on the Newburyport waterfront. And a guy had taken a baseball bat to a litter of kittens. There was a litter of kittens that were all tested positive for rabies back then. And so there was the whole question. Back in those days, it was often the trap and remove and euthanize was the option that they did for cat overpopulation. That happened in 1990 in a section of Newburyport. 1992, that area where they culled the cats, was repopulated with another 35 cats. So the city really and the Chamber of Commerce understood that that wasn't going to be a viable solution. So the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society was created in 1992 to trap, neuter, return those 300 cats, 14 feeding stations. And fast forwarding to 2008, the last cat passed away, and there are no more feeding stations down there and no more cats on the waterfront. And so we basically took TNR, Trap-Neuter-Return, and proved the concept that it is successful. We had 30 volunteers feeding the cats twice a day. The cats got sardines and roasted chicken every Sunday morning. They were a pampered group of community cats. But my first learning was understanding that this is a community-based solution. This is not one person. This is a team effort. We are working together collaboratively. Our first phone number was the Chamber of Commerce's phone number. So we had businesses involved, the local bank. A lot of the businesses adopted a cat. So our local bank had a bank cat, right? And so it's a very old, stodgy New England bank. And the cat would sit up on the wooden counter, and his name was Nickel. And so they, it was like, then the bookshop had a cat, and the framer shop had a cat. And and the Chamber of Commerce had a cat. So they all were sort of absorbing the cats. And it's once you get those outdoor cats spayed and neutered, the community wants to help those cats, but you don't want an unneutered cat in your shop spraying your picture frames, right? But if you got the cat neutered and ear tipped and vaccinated, maybe I can bring Fluffy in at night when it's cold out or whatever. And so that became this quasi-owned cat situation, which taught me a lot of flexibility. Let's be flexible, and there's a whole lifetime evolution. If we can do something for the cat today, we can do more for the cat tomorrow. It doesn't mean it's right now, this one piece of time. It's a lifetime evolution of support for the cats that are in the community. So that was one of my aha moments. And then, and I've had several others about adopting out my first feline leukemia positive cat in 1996 to a 6-year-old girl. And she was a lovely feline leukemia positive cat who had a litter of kittens, and her kittens were euthanized because they had tested positive for feline leukemia. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand why that happened. And so we sort of asked these questions. And so this cat, Nala, was adopted to the 6-year-old girl. And I said to the mom, hey, Mom, you realize Nala's a lovely cat, but she might not be around for in a couple more years. She might not have a long life. And she goes, it's a really good lesson to teach my daughter that, there's this love is not infinite. Love can be for 2 years, it can be for 20 years, it can be for 10 years, but it is that love that's the most important part of it. And so that was a turning point, for us and for our organization to really embrace the adoption of feline leukemia positive cats and thinking, creatively, in that space. And then, lastly is just getting into that owned cat community and understanding Adam and Eve always start in the owned cat community. And so how do we prevent those kittens from being born outside? We provide accessible, affordable spay-neuter services in the owned cat community. So in 2008, we started a mobile spay-neuter clinic program called the Catmobile, which inevitably assisted anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 cats a year with accessible, affordable spay-neuter. And we were mobile, so we can move around into the communities that really might be veterinary deserts. So again, it's that strategic thinking that's we're pulling the pieces apart and growing. We started with a very small Newburyport one town, and we ended up having a service area of 12 towns. We'd add a new town each year as we felt we were done with, not done, but we were at a balanced level in the community and we could move on to assist others. But we didn't do too much at one time.
So you have to tell me, you have a background in urban planning and architecture, right? How did that factor into this? When did those skills actually get used as you've evolved and all the stuff you're doing for cats?
Yeah, so it's funny. To understand how you would say urban planning and architecture, what does this have to do with it? But I'll use an example of something recently. Just this morning, I was working on a project with regards to community cats and birds predation. So this was a project I had today, and saying, how does our society, how have we changed since 1957 when cat litter was discovered in moving our cats from this outdoor only life because there was no such cat litter and they weren't spayed or neutered, and then now we're all of our cats have to be indoor only, and that's the best quality of life for our cats. But I'm part-time in Switzerland, and they have what are called cat ladders. And so cat ladders are, so many buildings in Switzerland are like 2 or 3 stories, and you'll see cat ladders on the side of the buildings for the cats, and they have little cat doors in the windows. And so, they encourage the cats to go indoor, outdoor, and finding a litter box in Switzerland is more challenging than you would think. Most people believe there that cats should be going in and out. So that's an architectural design. I'm going to build an apartment building with cat ladders on the side, right? So that's telling the community that this is the way that we should be treating our cats, for right or for wrong, in a design, mode. And then, and looking at like the way that our roads are designed, the way that our walkways are designed, and how do we address those issues for our cats, thinking about where our community cat feeding stations might be. How are they? Like, we used to think long and hard about how we were designing our feeding stations, our shelters, how the community cats were going to be kept in a safe way, but yet also be able to be free. So we had actually shelter design for our community. So we had a nice 2-level shelter design. So I guess some of the things that I come across is this like public-private, relationship, and how do we have an understanding of, cats, including like other things too. I mean, when I'm talking about cats, I'm also talking about rats. I go to public health officials, very political, I guess. I do have to go into that political space, and that's urban planning is very political. You're dealing with planning boards, you're dealing with zoning, you're dealing with rules and regulations. We have that in the cat world too. There's cat licensing, there's cat ordinances. So how do you know how to speak to these different constituents as a leader? I am a community cat leader. Anyone who's dealing with cats is a community cat leader. You need to know how to talk to the different constituents. And that's what urban planning taught me a lot about, not only design, but it also, in addition, it's, how to serve a client, how to serve the rules and the regulations, how to serve the needs of, a municipal situation. And just being able to speak the language for all the different parties was a lot of what I learned in the architecture space as well as urban planning space.
Bet you never thought you were going to use that for this, right? When you were going into it, that was probably not your goal.
Right. Well, so think of cats as like a piece of the puzzle, right? It's one thing of many. So we had a situation many years ago where, an older girl threw a kitten down the stairs. A younger boy picked that kitten up and went to one of our community cat feeders and said, "Here's an injured kitten. Will you help the kitten?" And that person said, "Thank you so much. We'll get help for the kitten. Why, how did you know to come to us?" or whatever. He goes, "I know you're the people that are going to help this kitten." But the other question is, how's there going to be help for that girl that threw the kitten down the stairs in the first place? So there's so much like social services. I mean, with another hat that I wear with an organization called Positive Pantry, we provide pet food for anybody in need. And we will deliver food to people in their cars with their pets because they don't want to go to a shelter that won't allow them to take in their pets. So they'll live in their car, and we'll get the food delivered to them in whatever way we can figure out. But then it's like, okay, so what's that next step upstream? We're always trying to go upstream. The cats go upstream, the people go upstream. We're all trying to go upstream to get to that root cause. I'm just using the cats as the tool to get there.
So, Stacy, if you went back, to your younger self before you got into this, what advice would you give her?
I would say jump on that spay neuter bandwagon earlier.
Okay. It was not part of the early, okay.
Yeah. So, well, the problem or the challenge was very clear to me. I mean, by 1998, that was another aha moment. We had an annual meeting, and we had Dr. John Caltabiano from the team van in Connecticut come up, and he had just started a mobile spay neuter clinic for cats in Connecticut. And he was one of those like crazy veterinarians who, he had gotten up at 5 a.m, driven an hour with his van, done 30 surgeries, brought the van back, and then drove up into northern Massachusetts to do this presentation, at 7 o'clock at night, and was going to, do this all over again. But I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, to provide affordable, accessible spay neuter services for cats. And at that point in time, our organization was not, we were doing some Friends of Animals vouchers, but we were assisting several thousand cats a year, and we were not moving the needle on the intakes in the shelters. It was not impacting in the way that it should be. And so it really got me thinking that we were not doing enough in that owned cat situation. And I had this moment where I had, a dumpster full of kittens, woods full of cats, and an apartment complex in the back. And so, that project really described to me that apartment complex is where I really need to be, with my spay neuter van, and getting to the cats that are in the apartment building first and making sure that they're spayed and neutered. So that was in 1998, and it took me 10 years to get to the mobile clinic stage. Took too long. So going back to my other self, I would say, get that van in 1999. I could only imagine where we would have been, with 10 years of surgery going on. Massachusetts is already thought of as being a place where, we're very proactive, and we do offer a lot of low cost spay neuter services, and our shelter statistics are great compared to the rest of the country. But we were late to the game. We were really late to the game.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we had spay and neuter is the only long-term solution here, right? I mean, relocation and all these other things are just, they're temporary fixes, but spay and neuter is what it's all about. So it's interesting that even admittedly, you're saying I was a little slow to figure that part out, but okay. So what are you clear about now that maybe a year ago you weren't clear on?
So I'm very clear that, and I don't want to use jargon here. So, I don't know, as a passion, as an industry, we are in the cat world very challenged in our skills to be able to declare ourselves a leader in the community. We are so used to being in the shadows. Community cat caregivers, trappers, individuals, as well as even our TNR organizations, even our community cat program managers. We try to be kind of quiet, shy, and humble. And I think we need to pull ourselves forward and into the light and declare that we really are the leaders in this field. And if there are professionals out there that are looking for proactive, productive solutions for community cat overpopulation, we are the people to go to for those solutions. Not being the solution, but understanding what needs to go into that toolkit in order to be able to be successful in the community. Because I'll go to a head of a public health department. They don't know what we know. They don't see what we see. So we have to share. And then you'll hear things like, oh, I really wish I knew this before. I didn't know. I didn't understand the challenges. We'll hear lines like, well, everybody should be responsible for getting their cats spayed or neutered. Well, I agree with that statement, but they have to be empowered to be able to do that. And that's where our country is falling short, is in that ability to be able to get the services that they need to get their cats spayed or neutered, ear tipped, identification, et cetera, the vaccines. I really think we need to move forward. And that's why I've spent so much time teaching a community cat program management course at the University of the Pacific. It's an online course because I want really folks to say, let's be proud and let's really acknowledge our skills. We are specialists, community cat specialists. And that's something that in the last year has really become clear to me that we need to spend more effort and time doing for our community cat folks.
Yeah, you do a lot, Stacey, a ton just on education. And as you said, it's like, because you can be that resource. It's one thing to go do it, but it's another thing to teach 10, 50, 100 people to do it. The impact is going to be so much greater by educating the next round of people and just sharing and coming at it. I really like the way you approach it. You come at it not in judgment. You just say, listen, I'm a resource. I've got knowledge. I've got experience, just like anybody else, right? You come to me, here, let me help you. Here's this resource. Here's that resource. Here's what you can do. But it's still a community-focused problem. And that's what I really love about what you just said. It's not Stacy LeBaron knows best. It's no, here's the tools that worked in our community. Here's what we tried. Try this in your community.
Right. And it may be different. Again, identifying a community cat's needs assessment. So we want to teach our folks to be able to be critical, creative thinkers. I don't know what's going on in Tampa, right? I don't have any idea. I know what's going on in my little town in Warren, Vermont, but I don't know what's going on in other communities. So it's teaching leadership means you need to understand what's going on in your community, introduce yourself, share yourself as a resource in the community, and be comfortable in that space and being willing to make creative decisions and own those decisions yourself. So it's not you tell me what to do. It's I'm going to take this information, I'm going to digest it and recommend the best path forward.
Very well stated. I mean, the communities across the country are similar and yet so different. And like you said, I would know more about Tampa and what's going on in Tampa and the people and how to approach and who to talk to and who the influencers are than you would. You could come down and you could do a way better job than me on TNR, but maybe not have the same impact because you're not a part of that community. And that's so important that, somebody that's living here day in and day out is saying, hey, look, these are our community cats. What are we going to do about this? Here, I found some resources and an expert that's willing to talk to us, but at the end of the day, it's still our responsibility.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I also want to stress too that as you're introducing yourself to the community, don't do it when there's a trauma going on. Do it before. Do it when it's comfortable. Introduce yourself to your chamber of commerce, your business managers at your local, Costco, Walmart, whatever, just public health. Do it when it's a non-confrontational moment, and then they've got the information right there. And I will say too, become an expert in rat population, because when you go in and present yourself to the board of public health or the public health officials, and you say, I'm a community cat, and they go, well, community cats, one thing, but we have a terrible rat problem. So how do we deal with that? So, there are going to be other areas that you're going to be asked about. So it's also good to have an open mind and knowledge about like dog stuff. I hate to say it, dog stuff, and, cat, and then rat stuff and, rodent. I mean, just, you don't have to become a super expert, but at least be willing to do some research in that space too.
Yeah, that's really smart. There's a lot of things, as you know, that are intertwined, right? And so don't just go in as a single shingle, as a rifle shot, right? Really understand the ecosystem that you live in. I'm sure you get all sorts of questions about they're killing the birds, and wait, we still have rats, and I mean, I'm sure it's on and on and on. But I think it's really smart to say educate yourself on all the aspects before you just go blazing in there. So, Stacy, as we wrap up our show, I always like to do a lightning round where we can learn a little bit more about Stacy LeBaron, the person. So you ready?
Sure.
I think I know the answers to some of these questions just because I know you. But we're going to start first with, which do you prefer, puppy breath or kitten purrs?
Kitten purrs.
Of course. I knew that one, right? Is Stacy an early bird or a late night owl?
Early bird.
Early bird. Okay, so you're up nice and early. What's the most unusual animal you've ever helped?
Is it a degu? Degu? I one Sunday morning with my 3-year-old daughter in the car at the shelter, we had 10 animals abandoned outside our shelter. And there was something called, it was like a digu. It wasn't those flying things. I'm forgetting the name of it. There was also birds and bunny rabbits and all that kind of stuff, and dogs and cats. I think it was like a digu or something like that. I've had some reptiles I've dealt with over time. So sorry, I'd have to go back. That was in the 90s. I have to go back and remember what it was, but I was like, what the heck is this?
What is a digu? Interesting. What do you do to decompress after a hard day?
I play tennis. Tennis. Yeah. Tennis is my I guess my jam or whatever. Anything with a racket, really, except for I haven't crossed over to pickleball
I was
yet.
just going to ask.
But yeah, no, I've played tennis since I was a kid. I played tennis 2 to 4 times a week when I'm here in the States. And I love it. I love it.
Nice. If your pet wrote a Yelp review of you as a parent, how many stars do you think you'd get?
3.
3? Only 3 stars. Okay.
Yeah.
Must be something behind that. He's not happy with something.
Yeah. Mom takes too much time away to help those bloody cats at the shelter and brings all those silly foster cats into the house.
There you go. There you go. That's probably a good gripe, right? Like if she could write, that would be part of the gripe. So Stacy, as we wrap up, what is your legacy? What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I mean, I would like, in general, just like as Stacy as the human being and the person, I would like people to think that I have always been, a truthful and honest person. I've represented myself and, the needs of the cat community in a true way. I just want people to just think that I'm, in general, good person. And I really do hope that we are able to turn folks into creating a TNR culture. So it's not something we have to work hard to put into our community. TNR is just what we trap, neuter, return, and spay neuter for our cats is just what we do. And so my ultimate legacy would be a world where we have 95% of our cats in the United States spayed or neutered.
Nice. I like that. Well, Stacy, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Obviously, thank you for everything you do. I really appreciate it.
Chris, you're awesome.